Steve, given the strong data, how does that potentially affect policy decisions ahead of the NPC that starts this weekend?
Yeah, there was a lot of speculation that perhaps China would need a lot more stimulus, perhaps, to get the momentum going on the economy. But yeah, a lot of the market participants and, according to sources, government leaders were surprised by that one set of numbers that we got. A set of numbers, including the services and manufacturing PMI, the composite PMI, the Caixin PMI, essentially all confirming that economic activity, manufacturing activity, services, the consumer, even housing picked up, sales picked up for the first time in 20 months. All this combined, this set of data that came out of China yesterday that lifted the markets and sentiment, essentially giving optimism ahead of the National People's Congress that starts this weekend. Look, there were really, I see, four main goals of the National People's Congress. In addition to this broad structural reform that Xi Jinping has talked about for government agencies, essentially, number one priority would be to get growth back on track after 3% growth in 2022. There could be a target set of around 5% for this year, but with these PMI numbers, there was a lot of optimism. Maybe they've already gotten it back on track. The number two goal would be restore confidence in China and the Chinese policy coming out of COVID-0 and the reopening story. And number three would be avoiding a buildup of financial risk. We'll talk about that in just a second as it relates to possible policy. But essentially, these government officials, according to the sources, had projected that the infection wave after they dropped COVID-0 would probably last through February and into March. Well, it turns out the data shows, according to these internal sources, that most of China got infected with COVID by the end of January. And what happened at the end of January? We had the Lunar New Year holiday. So coming out of that Lunar New Year holiday, we had pent-up demand, we had a waning infection wave across the country, and economic activity picked up like gangbusters. We saw manufacturing sector saw its biggest improvement in activity in more than a decade in February. Housing sales rose for the first time in 20 months. Consumer activity climbed. So all of that giving that optimism. But again, I must caution, there is pent-up demand that was in the system right there. So going forward, will this momentum continue, or will the market be disappointed by some of the structural reform measures that we talked about yesterday that Xi Jinping is going to try to carry through to government agencies and give the Communist Party more say in policy making as well as consolidating decision making at the very top?
Yeah, or will the market be disappointed by the fact that, if the reopening, the economic rebound is actually going better and faster than perhaps policymakers had expected? Does that mean we're not going to get much beyond just modest stimulus measures?
Yeah, that's right. So the hope for the flood-style stimulus probably has waned, of course. I think even on Friday, the PBOC indicated there won't be a flood-style stimulus. So a big economic package probably not in the cards. But still, most analysts that we've spoken to expect monetary and fiscal policy will likely remain supportive through the first part of this year, although chances of that big stimulus package that we talked about, Heidi, is seen as low. The PBOC likely to refrain from cutting interest rates sharply this year. And that goes back to that third target or third goal of the NPC that I mentioned. That is avoid the buildup of financial risk, avoid stoking inflation and all those issues that they had some regulatory control measures over the last couple of years. So again, accommodative policy, monetary and fiscal policies, but not the big bang stimulus that some had expected given how dire the economy had been. But the Chinese economy, at least this one set of numbers that I talked about on PMI, shows some confidence that there is momentum and a V-shaped recovery for now.